My questions relate to the Brisbane Airservices Australia engagement process. As I understand it, Airservices Australia has chosen a number of locations for face-to-face engagement in the Greater Brisbane area in June 2024. Are you able to tell me where those locations are?
Senator, thank you. Yes, they are published on our website, on our Engage website.
Yep.
Would you like me just to run through the list of the locations? Senator?
Yep.
I'll go through the suburb. There's specific locations.
Suburbs is fine.
Algester, Redland Bay, Morningside, Springfield Central and Amity Point.
Okay, and
there will also be a series of sessions online.
Online sessions as well. Do you know how many online sessions are proposed?
There are 3 online sessions scheduled between Wednesday the 5th of June and Tuesday the 18th of June.
Thank you. Are those physical locations the only ones that are proposed at this stage?
Senator, they are at this stage. It is the case that from time to time we get feedback and then we'll make some adjustments and then publish that as well. And typically we select those locations on the basis of where the flight path changes that are being discussed are considered to be in proximity for ease of attendance for community members.
Okay, thank you. Now, I note that all of those locations are south of the Brisbane River. My understanding is that Airservices has previously advised that sessions are being held in areas where residents are most likely to notice a change in aircraft operations as a result of the proposals in the Noise Action Plan, which is, I think, what you just said then. Yes. Does that mean that residents in the other suburbs will not notice a change in aircraft operations as a result of the Noise Action Plan?
Senator, it doesn't mean that. The Noise Action Plan has a number of packages to it. What it means is that the tranche, the particular piece we're going out to consult communities on this time round for this particular package of change is likely to be impactful on the southern side of the river.
Okay. Going to the Phase 2 Options Assessment document that was recently released by Airservices Australia, that document outlines 5 options for noise sharing. Is that correct?
Senator, that is my understanding, yes.
Okay. So based on that summary document put out by Airservices, the only option that appears that will be progressed is option 5, which solely impacts the northwestern suburbs and outskirts of Brisbane. If that's the case, why aren't there any consultation sessions planned for north of the river?
Senator, I don't know that there's been any determination made in that options assessment as to a particular option, only one going through. I'll have to take that on notice. My understanding was that there were a number of options that were progressing through to the next phase of consideration, and my recollection was there was one option not being taken through. But again, I'd like to take that on notice. We have a fairly extensive pack on all of the different options that were being assessed, the criteria against which they were being assessed.
Yeah. Can I suggest that would be good, because I've got the Phase 2 Options Assessment summary in front of me, and next to most of the options, it says this option will not be progressed, this option will not be progressed, this option will not be progressed, this proposal will not progress, and except for the last one. So I would suggest that that option paper does say that the only option that will be progressed is option 5.
Senator, thank you.
Which, as I said, is northwestern suburbs, and yet the consultations are happening south of the river. That seems somewhat incongruous.
Senator, thank you. I'll have to take that on notice. That's not my understanding, but I will take that on notice. If we were not progressing an option that was an option that would have impacted communities south of the river, we would still be consulting them or engaging them on any determination not to progress an option. But I will check with regard to the northern option you mentioned.
Yeah, it just seems to me that if you're consulting, you definitely want to be consulting the areas that are most likely to be impacted, and that seems to be the opposite of what you're paper is saying.
Senator, thank you. That is exactly our intent. And the decision, if there is a decision not to progress something, equally we would need to engage with those communities to explain that decision also.
Okay, well, maybe I would suggest that the people north of the river are awaiting with bated breath when they are going to get a chance to have a consultation. What is the budget for the Noise Action Plan for the Brisbane engagement for 2024-2025?
Senator, the Noise Action Plan budget in total over 3 years is $15.5 million. Your question related to engagement specifically, that's a subset of that, and I would have to take that on notice as it relates to a mixture of our internal costs, consulting costs, and also advertising and promotional costs to engage communities for financial year 24-25. I'd have to isolate it in that way. I could give you some information around advertising and promotional cost activities for this year.
Yeah, what we're particularly interested in is how the money is being spent and the types of events that you are putting under the heading of engagement. So is it pop-up events, is it advertising, what is the line spend for engagement in that plan? Now, as far as I'm aware, and please correct me if I'm wrong, engagement documents have not been released to the Brisbane Airport Community Airspace Advisory Board, community representatives or the broader community. Why are those documents being withheld at this point in time from the advisory board?
Senator, I'm not sure of which documents you're referring. Could you ask the question again?
So engagement documents. So my understanding is that there is meant to be engagement documents given to the Brisbane Airport Community Airspace Advisory Board community representatives, but they have received no documentation information. Is that the case?
Senator, that doesn't sound correct. I've attended personally all but one of the AAB meetings since it was initiated in March of last year. We've provided all of the documents that we've been consulting communities on as a part of that process. In fact, we've sought to, wherever possible, provide the documentation to the AAB ahead of public release to provide an opportunity for AAB members to provide their feedback directly on how they're seeing the approach to consultation, both the approach to consultation and the content of what we're consulting on. We've also taken AAB members through our facilities to try and give them greater awareness of what practically is done in the Air Traffic Control Tower in Brisbane and the Air Traffic Control Centre. We've had significant engagement with the AAB and have had very valuable feedback through that process. So that certainly doesn't sound right, and I'd need to know what specific documents you're referring to.
I'll go away, find out what that is, and we might put a question on notice if we can get some more clarity around that.
Thank you,
Now, going to the Noise Action Plan for Brisbane Phase 2 Options Assessment, interested to know why the nighttime overland noise sharing departure options that are being morphed into Phase 3 and 4 of the Noise Action Plan for Brisbane. So why are they being morphed into Phase 3 and 4?
Senator, the specifics of that issue I'd have to take on notice, but what I can say is some of the options that were considered both for Phase 1 options assessment and Phase 2 options assessment introduced some greater complexity than was originally envisaged with other flight paths, consequent follow-on impacts, and so it's been more appropriate to put some of those activities into what is a broader package of change, which is known as Phase 3 and Phase 4.
So you're saying they're more complex. Does that mean that Airservices Australia isn't capable of that flight path design and requires tracks to do it?
No, Senator. It's not a case of capability. It's more one of capacity in order to have a package of work done which is holistic and coherent. Making minor modifications is what was foreseen ahead of Package 3 and Package 4. Basically, smaller changes that could deliver some near-term outcomes for communities, whereas Package 3 and 4 were always envisaged to be more holistic changes, and so it makes sense where you have something that's going to have consequent follow-on impacts to be done as a part of that package, not to do something once and then potentially have to reverse it or adjust it again and again go and consult with communities.
And so Airservices doesn't have that capacity, hence the outsourcing to trucks?
That's correct, Senator. We find some of these arrangements to be beneficial to bring in international expertise to support some of the change process. As a matter of sort of national perspective, we've got a significant amount of activity happening in Western Sydney. Presently, we're doing significant preparatory works in this space for both Melbourne's new parallel runway and also in Perth. And so this is a once-in-a-generational investment in airport infrastructure in this country, and we are not sitting waiting with that level of capacity just or dormant in our system. And so whilst we have grown it, we have invested, it is still A, helpful to bring in capacity with an external partner, but B, to get international best practice can also help with thinking and new approaches.
Okay. Do you